It's no secret that America's journalists are getting more homogenous. Even if they look different, they overwhelmingly live in the same cities, hail from the same backgrounds, and most important, have pretty much the same ideas. The only people who deny widespread media bias these days are the people who are directly benefiting from it, and that would include progressive activists posing as reporters and the Democratic politicians whose water they carry. But exactly how liberal and how biased is the press? Well, for the answer to that, we'd have to go to social science. And now, for the first time in a while, we actually have some real data. A new study from researchers at Harvard University looked at 10 major news outlets and found the overwhelming majority of their coverage of the new administration's first 100 days was hostile. At CNN and NBC, both purportedly straight news outlets, 93% of the stories were negative, which is remarkable, considering that there's no way that 93% of their stories about, I don't know, pick someone, Fidel Castro, were negative. 93% is a lot. In fact, it's not really news coverage at that point, it's advocacy. The press was foursquare for Hillary Clinton from the moment Donald Trump got the nomination. They didn't hide it at all. And the emails that were leaked from John Podesta's Gmail account proved they were collaborating with the Hillary campaign. So there's not really much of an argument to make, do you think, that the press was on Trump's side?
Look, a conservative is going to say that the mainstream media was against Donald Trump, President Trump, and liberals, progressives, Democrats are going to say that they were against Hillary Clinton. But the fact is there have been independent studies that were done. Harvard Shorenstein Center did one. And look, both candidates got very bad press. You know, candidate Trump got terrible press, and Hillary Clinton got very bad press.
These independent studies are done by political hacks posing as journalists. The Shorenstein Center, I mean, I am a journalist. I sort of know the people who work there. And you're not going to tell me, because again, I know them, that they're politically independent, because they're not. They were as horrified as Martha Raddatz was when she cried on television at Trump's victory. Well, these people don't like Trump. I mean, that's true. But it's not just Trump. It's the issues that Trump's voters favor. The media disagree with those too, and they skew their coverage accordingly. Take immigration, for example. Now, there are many sides to that issue, but most Americans believe it ought to be illegal to come to our country without permission. That's why the Congress has made it illegal. But that's not what the people who work in the media think. They believe that defending the border is an act of bigotry, and so that's how they have portrayed it, with no other side represented at all most of the time. The Harvard study found that of stories on Trump's immigration policies, fully 96% were negative. There was more diversity in the Romanian media under Ceausescu. That's no diversity at all. Now, if you've read a newspaper lately, you've seen it. Here's the New York Times, for example. Immigrants hide, fearing capture on any corner. The LA Times. Trump's crackdown sparks fear and anger among immigrants here illegally. And, of course, America's least honest newspaper, The Washington Post, which wrote in a headline, "Immigrants are now canceling their food stamps for fear that Trump will deport them." Where are the stories about Americans hurt by illegal immigration? Well, you'd have to wait an awful long time to see those. There aren't many, if any. If anything, most television news is even more distorted than this.
President Trump drew an X today through the welcoming words of the nearby Statue of Liberty.
Trump has always trafficked in fear-mongering. This time, to stoke those fears and present himself as the country's protector, he chose to punish ordinary men, women, and children who are fleeing terrorism and violence.
This is just a proposal, but already immigration attorneys are telling me it's harsh and un-American.
Un-American. Well, that's news with a message at its core, just like in a political campaign, which in many ways is exactly what this is. Here's a piece by Michael Barbero, 3 days before the election. Hillary Clinton at a campaign rally, and I'm quoting this now. This is like a prose poem. It's erotic in its intensity. Quote, "Her arms thrust skyward, one after another, in what starts to feel like a dance. There's an unfamiliar sense of abandon and joy. The rain grows heavier. Her wet clothes turn a shade darker. She cracks a wide smile. She takes in the scene around her and laughs before she finishes her sentence." I could go on, but I'm feeling creepy about it. Meanwhile, same day, I won't go on, but the headline in the Times was, "Thin line splits Donald Trump's politics and business." Trump is a villain, Hillary is a hero. That was a storyline in every major media organization in America. You were there.
I dispute that completely. Look, you can cherry pick stories that were positive for her or negative against him.
When it became clear that he had some remote chance of winning, I mean, they piled on. Look, The guys who covered this campaign for the New York Times, for example, we don't need to guess what they thought. They wrote it. This is right after the election. Michael Barbero, who covered this as a New York Times reporter, quote, "We had fearless journalism throughout 2016. Voters wanted what they wanted." In other words, we tried our best to keep this guy from becoming president. They voted for him anyway. Many journalists believe it's literally impossible to be unfair to Donald Trump or the people who work for him. Extremism in the pursuit of Trump is no vice. That's the view in newsrooms, and you hear it in conversations all around Washington, a city that voted 91% for Hillary Clinton last fall. Media figures, adults, smart people who've been around, who have perspective or did have perspective, they don't anymore. They've succumbed to Trump hatred that is so intense, it has destroyed their judgment and in some cases affected their character. I see it all the time. Where normal people see the president's flaws, and they do exist, they see crimes and conspiracies. The rest of us may complain that Trump is undisciplined and impulsive. Fair. They regard him as the single greatest threat to Western civilization since atomic weapons. Watch.
I think this is a potentially more dangerous situation than Watergate, and we're at a very dangerous moment.
I mean, this is way beyond what we saw with even with Nixon for much of the time, although he was cordially hated on the left and in most of the media. Certainly George W. Bush was detested by the media to a great extent, but nothing like this.
Here you have a deranged president or a pathologically lying president lying about the operations of the American government and lying about the previous president of the United States. That's enough to invoke the 25th Amendment. But Mike Pence and the cabinet are not there yet.
When he said today, America first, it was not just the racial, the Hitlerian background to it.
I understand why so many people voted for him. I understand where you were coming from. I understand why you liked him. But this man is lying to you.
Trump's critics, those who are worried about this president and this White House, saw a live special television event brought to you by narcissism, thin skin, chaos, and deeply personal grievances.
This was a white lash. This was a white lash against a changing country. It was a white lash against a black president in part. And that's the part where the pain comes.
This is a really sad night. I'm just going to say it. This is a very sad night for the country. You can't polish this turd.
I don't know. Are you using the word lie or falsehood? What are you using?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
you have to use the word. You have to call it what it is. It was interesting because I saw Sean Spicer on Fox News, and he said that you were rude. And I thought, if the First Amendment does not require us to be fake news, what if you had called him a fake president?
It grates to hear the press described as anything but what they were, which was much more in favor of Hillary Clinton than Donald Trump. They're horrified by Trump. He doesn't like them either, by the way. He attacks them directly, and they take it personally. But they really wanted her to win. They may not have liked her personally. I don't think a lot of them did. But they wanted her to win. That's just true.
Look, it's what you're stating. I see it the exact opposite.
You may have heard by now, the president fired FBI Director James Comey. The White House says Comey got canned because he overstepped his bounds in the Hillary Clinton email investigation. Now, whether you believe that explanation or not, there's an awful lot of evidence that Comey was the wrong man to run the world's most powerful law enforcement agency, so good riddance to him. Now, under normal circumstances, an awful lot of Democrats here in Washington would have agreed with that assessment. They never liked Comey, they never trusted him, and they had ample reason to feel that way. But these are not normal circumstances. Donald Trump is now the president, which, in the view of the permanent Washington class, means that anything the White House does isn't simply wrong and immoral and stupid, but literally the beginning of the end of America itself.
Donald Trump, in much of his rhetoric and many of his actions, poses a danger to American democracy.
This looks political from the outside. Let me tell you what it looks like as a practitioner. This is emotional. The president acted in a cowardly fashion. He's a coward.
What's going on here is an effort to cover up the facts.
This is something that is completely outside how American law is supposed to work. It's a grotesque abuse of power by the President of the United States. This is the kind of thing that goes on in non-democracies. This is a dark day in American history.
A little whiff of fascism tonight, I think it's fair to say.
Absolutely.
A little whiff of, I don't care about the law, I'm the boss.
What may become known as the Tuesday afternoon massacre at the FBI.
Now, let's clear up one thing right now. It's not a constitutional crisis when the Constitution allows you to do it. The FBI director serves at the pleasure of the president, all presidents, and can be dismissed at any time, and sometimes he ought to be.
The press will always be overwhelmingly liberal. You got to accept it, stop whining about it, because it's not going to change. I don't think it's a conspiracy. It's a kind of a self-selection process where the smart conservative kids start a business, smart liberal kids, you know, go into journalism and social work and other things. So I don't think it's a big conspiracy, but that's the way it was. Today you got Fox. You've got one page of the Wall Street Journal. You got talk radio. The monopoly has been broken. And I think for some liberals in the media, that's a part of the reason why they go so much overboard. They can't stand the fact that they can't get away with murder because it'll be questioned.
That's right.
In those outposts, they're only outposts, still a tiny minority of the media outlets, but in an internet world with cable and with other outlets, they can't have the field to themselves, and that drives them crazy.
It really does. They hate that more than anything. We don't allow reporters to cover their spouses or their kids. Why don't we? Because they wouldn't be able to see clearly. Their emotions would cloud their judgment. Their love would get in the way of fair coverage. Hate has the same effect on people. It distorts your view of reality. In the end, it blinds you completely. And that's where the American media are right now, stumbling around in a sightless rage, screaming. I want to play you a clip you may have seen. It's from 2 days ago, I think. This is over at CNN. And watch how the anchor, this is not an opinion person or a paid contributor, this is the anchor of the show, responds when one of her guests suggests maybe you should be skeptical. Watch this.
CNN reports 2 former officials knowledgeable of the situation confirmed to CNN the main points of the story. Two former officials. Tell you what, come out, name those people, then we'll have something to talk about.
One, we protect sources. 2, it's not just CNN. It's Washington Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, CNN, ABC,
yeah, but who
NBC.
Who are the sources?
Carl.
Who are the sources? Oh, because they're hiding behind this anonymity.
Oh,
and that's what we're seeing.
Please, do not even start with me that you're just going to attack sources.
Okay, so
that
what
is
about,
ridiculous.
so are you saying McMaster is lying?
I'm not saying McMaster is lying.
Well, he didn't really answer the question.
He didn't answer the question.
He said nothing inappropriate was
He
shared.
said, no, that's his opinion.
That would be.
But that's his opinion.
You cannot say, you cannot attack, do not attack the stellar reporters of CNN.
Okay.
He was making an excellent point, which is the news media today gets to use these anonymous sources, and the anonymous sources can say all sorts of terrible things about Trump. Are they Obama officials? Are they the Clintons? Are they current government officials who Obama appointed? All this information would help us decide whether these sources, what they're saying, might have an axe to grind. But you attack a CNN reporter, what? That's just intolerable. You can't do it. They start screaming at you when you suggest somehow the so-called mainstream press might, have a bad motive.